Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Hayden Bliss. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Biomark, and I want to thank everyone for attending this webinar today. We hope that you and your loved ones are safe and healthy during this time. We have a good webinar for you guys today, a great one actually, from our colleagues at Vaki. We've got some great attendees as well, US, Canada, the UK, Netherlands, Italy, Sweden, Denmark, and India. And this is a second in a series of webinars that we've done with Vaki now that Vaki is part of the Biomark family. And this webinar will focus on the Riverwatcher product that Vaki has. And we'll also touch on a few of the pit tag system-related components that are compatible with the Riverwatcher. And it will be presented by my colleague Magnus Asgeirsson. He will talk about the Riverwatcher. And then our colleague Anthony Carson will also speak briefly about some of the pit tag components associated with this system. A few housekeeping items first. On the right-hand side of your screen, you will see there is a chat function and a Q&A section, so please feel free to ask questions, chat with us during the presentation. I will jump in and ask Magnus questions as they come in, and then we will also hang out for 5-10 minutes afterwards on the call to take any additional questions or comments that anyone may have. And then also we're recording this, so we'll put it on the website, social media afterwards, so feel free to rewatch it, share it, whatever you would like to do. And then, so basically with that, I'd like to introduce Magnus and we'll get started. Go ahead, Magnus.
Thank you, Hayden, and hello, everybody. Welcome to Iceland, the home of the Riverwatcher. Yeah, my name is Magnus Thor, and I'm starting off with a slide here of a fisherman holding a fish. Beautiful specimen. I believe it's a male. I'm not sure about the fish, though. But if you notice how he holds the fish, he's holding it as close to the camera as possible. And this is the oldest trick in the book. And we'll come back to that in a moment. I'm going to start with a story of a fish. Now here's a brown trout that migrated upriver in Testeboån in Sweden. There's somebody from Sweden on the call. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And he was measured 77 centimeters, or 77, as they say in Sweden. In the same river, later that year, we detected this guy, measuring 89 centimeters. Now, this Riverwatcher is a pit tag Riverwatcher. So without that equipment, we wouldn't have known that this was the same fish. He had grown 12 centimeters in 51 days. We know the growth potential of sea trout is immense, but I mean, this is astonishing. But like we saw in the first picture, if you hold it close to the camera, it appears bigger, right? So the picture on the right side, he's much closer to the camera. He looks like he's double or triple in size, but that's not the case. But the Riverwatcher takes this into account when it's measuring the fish, so it doesn't matter how close or far away from the camera it is. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about how this all works and why we're doing this. And it's good to keep in mind that you know, whatever role you may have, there are different reasons for monitoring fish. We may be monitoring changes in the environment, effect of aquaculture, invasive species, or the efficiency of a fishway. So it's definitely very important in many ways. There are many ways to do this. We know electrofishing, we know the use of sonars, pit tags, of course, videos, manual counts, and resistivity counters. They all provide different results. And the data may not be easy to compare, And most of these methods take quite a lot of HR to make any sense. What we're dealing with at Vaki is automatic quantity monitoring. And our methods are optical scanning technology and video detection and combination of those two. So let me just start with giving you a short video here. That should play or not. Oh, never mind. I'm going to go through most of what should be in this video. So if you go on YouTube and type Riverwatcher, you should get this video up and running. I won't bother with it right now. The heart of the Riverwatcher system is the Riverwatcher S, as we call it. S stands for scanner. Now it has infrared scanners, 2 sets of panels, and we need the fish to come through that gate to be measured and counted. How does that work? Each panel has 2 sets of diodes and shooting beams across, and as the fish comes through, it blocks the beam and casts a shadow on the other side. So this is how the computer sees the fish as it comes through. And if the fish is moving in a straight line, it will give us a pretty good image, even if it's just a silhouette. However, if it goes very, very fast through, it will take on a more like a torpedo shape. And if it goes really slow, it can get a bit more distorted. But that doesn't matter for the count or for the measurement. It just has to do with the picture. We've had some monsters coming through the Riverwatcher, so if they can crawl through that gate, we can count them. It's designed to count adult fish, and it will not like the smallest juveniles, but we do have other counters for that, and I'll come back to that later. So it will detect fish maybe 15, 20 meters and up. Now we tend to show pictures of salmonids, but it's not only salmonids, of course, different animals. And worth noting here that if there's a lot of turbulence in the water, the air bubbles can start behaving strangely and create false counts. So we want to avoid that if we can. We calculate the size of the fish based on the height of the fish. And we do this because of many reasons. I'll show you pictures later on. But as the fish comes through the counter, it can turn, it can be bent. So the length of the fish, as we see it, might not be the best way to measure the length, but the height of the fish is always constant. So we measure from the highest point, and we calculate from there with the length to height ratio. The generic setting is 5, which is based on salmonids, but the user can change this, and if you have already categorized species in different groups, you can have different length to height ratio for each species. Next up, we have the Riverwatcher C, and C stands for camera, which is camera only Riverwatcher. So the camera is doing the detection and the count. It doesn't have these infrared scanners. This is exciting technology. There's a lot of development going on in the camera technology. We're following that closely and using it for different applications. However, worth noting here that this type of Riverwatcher works best in clear water. Then we have the Riverwatcher SSEE, which has the combination of both scanner and camera. The scanner will trigger the camera to record a video clip of every fish that comes through. The first versions of this, we had the camera on an arm, but then the fish would maybe move away from the camera or shoot down into the pool or something. And then we came up with this tunnel, and inside this tunnel we have lights which can be adjusted, and we also have an air-filled cone, which minimizes the amount of length of water that the camera has to shoot through before it hits reaches the fish. We want to get the fish as close to the glass wall as possible to get best results. Typical setup options. This is the most common one. You place the tunnel in the water, have a cable up to the bank where you have the computer plugged into mains, electric, and internet. If we don't have electricity on the site, we may be in a rural area, we can set it up for solar panels, or we can put up a wireless link with a line of sight for 10 kilometers. Just to give you an idea, we can adjust those systems to your rivers and your fish passes to some extent. If there's no way of like narrowing the opening, we can stack them up or make them higher. In this case, we see a vertical slot fishway on the upper left. If you go on our website, you will see some examples of installations around the world. This is in California. We have a floating weir, and in the opening where the fish has to find the gate, we have the Riverwatcher. This is in Iceland. This one is in Germany. On the left is the one in Germany again, and on the right we have a system in Cardiff in Wales. In a tidal area, you can see the fishway is a laminar type fishway, and the infrared panels are attached to the walls there. So,
Magnus, a couple questions for you coming in.
Thanks.
I think you kind of briefly touched on it there, but somebody asked, what the difficulty of installing, a Riverwatcher system in an existing fishway.
Yeah, if there is a fishway, existing fishway or fish ladder, it makes things much easier. We just need to have like an in-scale grid to fit the opening of the Riverwatcher. Now, the opening of the Riverwatcher can somewhat be adjusted. However, there's a physical limitation to the width of the opening. So the distance between the scanner plates is somewhat limited to the water clarity. So the water is completely clear. We could go up to 1 meter, but usually that's not the case with natural waters. So the sweet spot is somewhere closer to 50 centimeters. We've set up the custom systems to 45 centimeters. That seems to work in most conditions, and also handles turbid water pretty well. So that's the way we recommend the setting, and that can be fit into the fishway. I wouldn't say it's plug and play, but almost. It's pretty easy to set up.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And then one more question for you. Someone asked how many Riverwatchers have been installed around the world.
We've installed 500 Riverwatchers, approximately 500 Riverwatchers around the world since we started, and these are mostly in Europe, Scandinavia, and UK, and the US, but we have some other places as well. So it's It's a world traveler. The Riverwatchers, all over the world almost. We have a couple of systems in Australia and no system yet in India, but we have a participant from India. So we'll talk to you probably after the presentation.
Great, thank you, Magnus.
Just to show you that it doesn't need to be that complicated. Here's a very minimalistic approach. This is in Poland. But I mentioned in the beginning the story of this fish we detected by the pit tag Riverwatcher, and we made the pit tag Riverwatcher with Biomark long before we became family, so to speak. But we've had good cooperation through the years, and came up with this idea of a Riverwatcher with antenna from Biomark on the one end of it. But maybe Anthony from Biomark would like to jump in and tell us a little bit about this particular version.
Yeah, thank you, Magnus. In this particular setup, there's a picture there of the Riverwatcher, and to the right, in this instance, the pit tag system is mounted to the upstream side, which is on the left side of that with the yellow wire. Basically, this consists of a RFID reader and a shielded antenna, which will only detect tags as it passes through the antenna. It can detect both FDXB tags, which is the full duplex, and the HDX tags, half duplex tags. Detected tags will be stored with date and timestamp to correlate with the video. Very much.
Thank you, Anthony. This is a great piece of equipment, and many of our customers through the years have also been using pit tags, and to combine these technologies is a game changer for many. Great stuff. We have I talked about the size limitation of the Riverwatcher. We have for smaller fish something that we call a smolt watcher, which is a pipeline counter. In this particular counter, we want to get the smolts in a bypass tube, maybe going around a dam or a power plant, and we gather them in a tube, and we can count them from there. We have a couple of different versions of this technology, and this is the same technology as we are using in fish farming all over the world. Very high speed and good capacity to handle abundance of smolts coming down in a short period of time. We also have a special Riverwatcher to count the juvenile eels as they would crawl up an eel ladder, eel brush. They will reach a highest point, a tipping point, where they will be flushed down into this counter, and then we can count them with a line scanning technology. This setup was done with Aquatic Control Engineering in UK, ACE. It's working very well. Count this very small animals, glass eels, almost transparent. Now I've talked about the different versions that we have in the Riverwatcher product line, and I want to talk about now the automatic reports and the data that you get from the systems. So if you log on to a website called Riverwatcher Daily, and anybody can do that, you will see, if you choose a river, you will see opening page like this, some information about the river, maybe a picture from that river. Last fish seen will be automatically uploaded, and you can also click to see the largest one. The yellow line is the temperature, and the green bars are the number of fish. And you have the table of fish up and down and the total as well. So if you would click the green bar for any single day, you will get a page like this. It shows all the fish that came through that particular day. And as you scroll through them, you will see the silhouette change and a short video clip of every single fish. Anybody can log in, and anybody can go onto the site and see the rivers that are in public view. But if you're a registered user, you can log in, and that will give you access to much more detailed information. You can also edit the data. As you can see in this window here, in the up left corner, we have a table with a timestamp and some other information. And down there, you have a field for pit. So if this would be a pit tag Riverwatcher, you would get the identification of that fish unique number right there. And it's also worth noting that if you're a user, you can log in and set alarms. So if you have unusual activity, like no measurements for a long period, you would get notified. And also if there's no connection to the Riverwatcher at some point, you will also get notified, or you can set who will get notified, local stakeholder maybe. It's important to get these notifications for the equipment, especially if the equipment is in a rural area. Nobody might be going there for some period of time, and you wouldn't want to just leave it and hope that it's working. We have a couple of references here from a user in the US. California, Mr. Ryan Greathouse, and comparing the Riverwatcher to other methods that he's been using, he's mentioning that it's useful in turbid conditions and no handling of the fish, and it reduces human error. It's important because, like I said in the beginning, most other methods will require a lot of HR to make any sense. But don't just take it from me or us. There was an interesting report made a couple of years ago for the Scottish government and the network of rivers for Scotland, and they were comparing different types of counter technologies. And just to make a long story short, I mean, you can look this up. The Riverwatcher scored very high in this comparison. They had a criteria looking into lots of things. For example, the operation cost. Now, the Riverwatcher was not the cheapest that they looked into when you only looked at the startup cost. But over time, if you looked at the operation cost, it put the Riverwatcher on top in most of these cases. And they stated here that the automatic fish detection feature eliminates the need of manual verification of lengthy video data. It's a great reference for us. Now, there are some known issues you need to be aware of. One of them is turbidity. Like we said, the Riverwatcher with both camera and infrared scanner can handle turbidity better than I think any other system out there. The reason is that the infrared beams of the scanner are penetrating the water much better than the white light from the camera or the visual scope. So it means that when the camera is going blind, it doesn't see anything. The scanner is still measuring and counting the fish and providing us the silhouette. We can see also on the upper left screen there, in similar conditions, comparison of using an air-filled cone and without the air-filled cone, we don't see much. The camera is shooting through a lot of water before it reaches the fish. But even in these turbulent conditions, with an air-filled cone, we get a much better picture of the fish. And of course, the silhouette is always there. Another known issue is overlapping of fish. Now, this can occur. You could get lots of fish, maybe in a group, coming through at the same time. And any system would have difficulty making any sense of that picture in the bottom left there. So what we do is we record a backlog file 24/7 that you can look into, and you can just look at that timeline in the upper left picture. If the line is just clear, there's no need to do anything, but if there's something strange going on, you can zoom into that, and that gives us a video clip of that particular point in time, and you can adjust and edit the data, add a few fish if needed. Also, one thing that is worth noting, known issue is if there's a chance of icing, it would be a good idea to take the system out, because that's going to wreak havoc on the system and break everything. So in rivers and areas where you do have ice during the winter, we definitely recommend taking the system out during those periods.
Magnus, a question for you that just came in.
Yeah, sure.
What is the limit on turbidity levels on the camera and the infrared version of the Riverwatcher?
There was a study made in Australia on that. It was a turbidity test. Typically, the cameras won't see anything after like 20 NTU. However, the scanners kept on working long after that, and they would see perfectly up to 90 NTU. And interestingly, they would not like gradually lose the accuracy. They would just work perfectly up to 90, and then it would just shut off and go blind after that. That's very dark water. You put your hand into the water, you won't see your hand.
Okay, great, thank you.
I've got a couple of slides showing the Riverwatcher in action. Now, please bear in mind that we had some trouble with the video before. I'm hoping that works this time. We're going to look, for starters, at this fish here, which was the biggest one last year in Laugardalsá. It's this one river here in Iceland, and just a quick crash course for you in Icelandic. River is that letter on the end of that word. So if you have an A with a dot on it, that's Á, and every river in Iceland will be ending on that same letter, which means river. So that's your first Icelandic word, I guess. Yeah, here we have a strange silhouette, and we have a clear, nice picture of that fish. But how can that be? If we have a look, I hope the video will play. Oh. Funny. Of course, it worked perfectly yesterday when we tried this out. But anyhow, I'll go back to this. So in this case, the fish is coming through quite fast, and then it slows down, which gives us a strange silhouette. But it gets measured perfectly, right measurement, and we might get a good picture of it as well. Here we have in the same river a eel coming down, and here you see an example of what I was talking about with the length to height ratio, why the length of the fish might not always be the best way to measure the length. As you can see, he's turning inside the tunnel. So by measuring the height of the fish and set the length to height ratio for eel, we will get the right measurement. If the water is clear, we will just have great pictures like these. This is almost like it's just floating in mid-air. A couple of different species there just hanging out. In Riverwatcher Daily for this river, we can see the migration pattern of the fish. You can see the small fish are entering early. Then we get no, it's a large fish, sorry, entering early, and we get lots of small fish and some larger ones again here, some distinctive peaks, and it goes hand in hand with the temperature, as you can see. And this one shows us a pattern of two species. The green ones are the salmons, and the pink ones are the Arctic char. So you can see there's a slight difference of how they migrate. And you can also see by this chart the size difference. The char is much smaller. Here's the largest one in another river, Langadalsá, and you can see the picture here. It's a bit black and white, and the reason is that this is a fish migrating in the middle of the night. It's almost 4 o'clock in the night, and we've set the light in the tunnel to bright white lights during the day and turn to infrared light during the nighttime. So any fish wanting to migrate in the dark, they can do so, and we don't want to startle them by turning on the lights when they come through. It gives us a good picture, but it's black and white, but still pretty good. This is behavior that we've seen in some of our Riverwatchers. Lots of juveniles just hanging about inside the Riverwatcher, having a good time, probably hiding out from predators like this one we see here. We have an otter hunting in that Riverwatcher, and we've seen him catch a fish actually. Now I want to see if we can just turn to Riverwatcher Daily on my browser.
Hey, Magnus.
Yeah.
Question for you that just came through on the looking at kind of the camera Riverwatcher there. Someone wants to know, do you see fish that are going up and down, hesitating before they go through, up or down, vice versa? Magnus, you're muted.
Turn around, go back down again, up and down, you know. But since we're counting them in both directions and then give a net result, we will, the total number will be corrected for that kind of behavior.
Magnus, you were muted for the first part of that answer. Can you state the first couple 10 seconds there.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that. So yeah, we've definitely seen fish sometimes behave like that, going up and down again. And if we were only like counting up migration, we would think that there's a lot of fish migrating, right? But since we're counting them in both direction and give the total number, it's always corrected for that kind of behavior. Now, if we have a couple of minutes left, I would just like to show you the Riverwatcher daily I've discussed and shown you some examples of. Just go around the world. This is in Australia. We have a Riverwatcher in Juvenile River, and just recently started. You can see the green bars here, fish going up and down. And you can see a lot of this behavior, like I just discussed. A lot of fish coming up, a lot of fish going down. Here we have the total number. This particular river. You can see there's some buildup of algae and debris there, but it still counts the fish, and this is the largest that we've seen today, 8 days ago. And if you look closely, there goes. There's a big fish coming down river. It goes pretty fast. If we then go to Germany, we have a special setup in Germany where we have a lot of sensors connected to the Riverwatcher. We can see here fish coming up in some distinctive patterns. We can look at oxygen, temperature, pH, salinity, total gas pressure, dissolved oxygen. Lots of things that we can take into the Riverwatcher daily database and look at against the migration patterns. Now, if we move real quick over to Canada, we have in the Kamouraska in Ontario a Riverwatcher just recently installed again, and there's already some action there, some movement. We see the last fish yesterday measuring 54 centimeters going upriver. There it goes. In the dark, using the infrared setting. You can log on. You can go onto this website. You don't have to be logged on to see some of these rivers. Just and right here, yeah. As you can see, it's not always just clear water. It can be also muddy waters like this. And in this view, and the Isle of Mull here, I've chosen to show just the videos, and so it just loops, and it will automatically update when we have a new fish. And this is a popular view for fishing clubs to have maybe on a big screen in the fishing hut, so they can see the last fish, see what's happening.
Magnus, we had a follow-up question on that question regarding fish hesitating, going up and down.
Yeah.
They asked, does this have to do with the fact the fish cannot orient themselves in the tunnel? Is there too much laminar current?
Well, that depends. That depends on the setup. Every installation is different. Sometimes we see them like take shelter, take refuge in the Riverwatcher. Just if it's on the top of a fishway, they may have they may have a hard time getting through that fishway, and then the Riverwatcher is sitting at the opening, and they might just want to, you know, take a minute to rest before they head out, and during that time they can maybe be going back and forth a little bit. And also we can see some fish sheltering from predation inside the Riverwatcher. So the answer has to be it depends. And sometimes the current could be too much for some of the fish, some of the maybe weaker swimmers. But I mean, that's a good thing that we then find out that this fishway is only built for the strongest swimmers. So the Riverwatcher will give us an indication of that.
Great, thank you.
Here you can see just some example of our installations around the world. Not all of them are in Riverwatcher Daily. Some of the users actually would not like to be in public view, so you might not see them at all. We are installing a lot of systems now in our part of the world, where the Atlantic salmon is now starting to migrate in these areas. So it's exciting times ahead, and there will be a lot more happening on the Riverwatcher Daily page in the weeks to come. So please feel free to go online and check out this page. There's nothing you can do wrong. You cannot do anything unless you are logged in. But yeah, I think that will cover it from our end. Check out the riverwatcher.is webpage, and feel free to send me questions if anything comes to mind after this session. But yeah, like Hayden said in the beginning, we'll be around for some more minutes to answer your questions if you have any. But that's it for the presentation, and thank you for sitting in and joining.
Magnus, thank you for that. Well done. We'll hang out for about 5 minutes here. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to type them in the Q&A, and we'll get to them. And thanks again, as Magnus said, for everybody taking time to join us today.
No questions? Everything clear as mud, I guess.
No questions. You must have done a fantastic job, Magnus.
It must be. I'm just gonna if we don't have any questions, maybe add a little bit something just to give our listeners like a ballpark figures, so they know what this system might cost. And since most of you are in US, let's stick to that. But yeah, the Riverwatcher C, the camera only version is maybe the entry point. It's about $35,000. The scanner, the Riverwatcher S with the scanner with the silhouette only system, that's about 40,000. And the CS system with both technologies combined is the flagship, so to speak, with everything included, and that's $65,000.
Magnus, I believe you touched on this briefly, but do customers have to give Vaki permission to post data to their sites on Riverwatcher Daily?
No, it's actually the other way around. So the customer owns the data, and they have to give us the access to post it online. So that's up to the customer. Definitely, it's up to the customer. They own the data. They own the equipment and the picture of the fish. So if they're okay with it, it's in public view. And we also have like a couple of different options. You can have some of it in public view. For example, you might have just this window I'm showing here again. You might have just this in public view, and you wouldn't be able to like dig into it and click a day to see any further, you know. So there's some levels to that, and the customers can set that.
Great, thank you.
It's also maybe I did mention solar panel operation if we don't have access to electricity. If anybody's interested in that kind of setup, it will of course depend on weather, sunshine, trees, and stuff like that. But it's definitely something we can do and have done with good success in some areas. So if the Riverwatcher is in idle mode, it will take about 25 to 30 watts continuous. But if the lights are on, the white lights are on, it will be more like 30 to 55 watts continuous power need.
And one other question that just came through. Issues, have you seen issues with algae growing on the glass of the camera or the window there?
Yeah, that's a good question because in some parts of the world, this can be an issue. In other parts, it's not. So again, I guess it depends and takes a bit of trial and error to figure it out. You might just put the Riverwatcher in the river and leave it for a month and it's fine, or you would have to go about and clean it every week. So we'll leave that to the local stakeholders to figure that out, but it will definitely affect the operation if there's an algae buildup. So we recommend giving it cleaning of the glass wall in front of the camera, and also the scanner panels. They need to be cleaned as well. If we have buildup, it can interfere with the count. So maybe it's every week, maybe it's every other week, maybe it's once a month. Need to that need to be considered, and then of course accessibility to the counter need to be considered as well. Could you go in there? Could you shut off the water to go in there, give it clean? Can you pull it out of the water somehow? So we've seen some different ways to do that, and if you go on our website, you have examples of setups where you have some lifting mechanisms to lift the equipment up to clean it, or some ways to shut off the fish ladder to go in and clean it.
Great, thank you, Magnus. I believe we have worked through all of our questions here, so I think it's time to go ahead and sign off. So thanks again for those that stuck it out and had some more questions. And with that, Elsa, will you go ahead and stop the recording and turn it down?